Just want to do a quick check of the room, see who I'm talking with. How many of you in the room right now are caregivers right now? At least you define yourself as a caregiver. Okay, over half. How many of you would consider yourselves surviving caregivers? Your loved one is gone and now you're finding yourself again. Okay. To me, that's really, really important as I get this thing started up. Julie, I really appreciate the comment that Julie made about her losing herself, because I can tell you right now, I'm a surviving caregiver as of December of last year, and I felt that the moment my dad passed away, I lost myself. So I'm sort of recovering. Still in recovery mode as we speak, as I'm trying to get this presentation working. Bear with me for a second here. Lisa, you want to chat? Okay, it's just neat. I think it's in sleep mode. Oh, you want? Okay, you don't need this. Okay, so I am a what you want to call a caregiver, but I never really defined myself as that. As you'll see once I get started in the presentation, I was sort of caregiver by default in my family. How many of you are caregivers, but you're not the eldest sibling in the family? You sort of got yourself, volunteered to be a caregiver? Okay, that's the role that I don't know how I volunteered for it or not, but I think I actually had the right vehicle for it. I had a Pathfinder, so I qualified to be caregiver because both my parents were in wheelchairs. Okay, so I won the prize. Okay. So I am one of those guys that was nominated by the family, unanimous decision, to be caregiver for my parents. And I didn't realize until I started working on this presentation, my definition of caregiver was really different. Okay, I believe the people that I've worked with in hospice, okay, the people I've worked with in the senior communities, the nurses and the aides, those are the true caregivers. Okay, I totally admit it that. I showed up, okay? That's what my role as a caregiver, I showed up. And boy, did that change my life, okay? So what I'm going to talk about today, I call it the healing power of reminiscing, because you're going to hear in a few minutes if I don't cry. Can you hear me okay? Okay. You never know? Okay. Healing power of reminiscing with your family member. Okay, it's a real time story for me, and it's actually, as I find myself, as I become whole again, it's become really my mission and my focus in life. I have to have a couple disclaimers here because it's very important. Don't take notes for what I'm saying. I am not a trained medical professional, nor do I pretend to be one. With the stories that I hear and the experience, how many of you in the room had this experience of never ever being able to remember prescription names? Body parts, symptoms, diagnostics. I became dysfunctional. I just couldn't remember. And both my parents were looking at me like, what did the doctor just say? So I just go in there. I'd never ever recover from that. I'm also not a gerontology professional, or do I pretend to be one? Okay. And I rate myself a C, maybe a C minus as a caregiver. Okay, I should put that there. It should be, I showed up. Okay. I showed up, but it changed my mom's life. It changed her life. Her life changed at the end of her life. And that's the really, really wonderful thing that I experienced. So we're going to start, okay, on September 8th, 2010, I got a call at home. I was a single guy living in a condominium. Got a call from the hospital, Mercy Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, that you need to come to the hospital. My mom had been in the hospital for almost 10 days. She was a recovering cancer survivor. She was diabetic. She was operating on one kidney, and she was failing. She had COPD, and she was failing. We had just gone through 3 full days of trying to figure out how in the world we're going to put her back together, because she was just fading and fading and fading, and we knew she was. And the night before, we just said, the first thing we're going to try to do is get her on dialysis. And that was going to be enough trauma for her to put her on dialysis. She was 77 years old. She was really weak, COPD. But that was our decision. Before I went home that night, that was our decision. At about 4:30 in the morning, I got a call. It said, you need to come in here now. Okay. The doctors, since I was the anointed one for the family, I was the caregiver, and I was power of attorney. The doctors pulled me over. And they said, this is time. Your mom is just nothing we can do right now. She's not going to last long. Okay, let's just do the right thing. But she's still cognizant. It's still her decision. So the doctors had to explain it to her. Okay, so the doctors, I'm always with both my parents. I was always in the room with them. My parents actually thought I was absorbing this stuff. Okay, but they always she listened to this doctor. She was really ill, and it was early in the morning. But she listened to this doctor in a tone I could tell by her expressions that she had matured. I mean, she was listening for the first time that I remember, in years. The doctor said, "Is it, Mary? We think it's time. We think it's time for you to consider hospice." Well, my family knew immediately that my mom in hospice is not going to last very long. She was on all kinds of medications. She was on oxygen. She was just, we knew that with her kidneys the way she was, we knew it wasn't going to last very long. So my mom turned to me and she goes, "Mike, what do you think?" Mike, what do you think? And that moment of time, some wisdom came about me. Based on what I'm going to tell you the rest of this presentation, the wisdom came about me. I knew. This lousy little caregiver knew, Mom, it's time to let go. Without hesitation, for some reason, at that time of the hour, I said, "Mom, I think it's time to let go." And she looked at me in the calmest eyes, and this is before they even gave her the happy pill. She goes, "Mike, I think you're right." It's like, okay then. That was a life-changing moment right there. Okay, my mom didn't survive another 24 hours. Okay, so that was 2010. My dad had dementia. He was going downhill even when my mom was passing away. He was living with her in their nursing home that they lived at the time. I get a call. My dad, he died on December 5th. I get a call. Dad was in Cincinnati. I was in Edwardsville, Illinois, 325 miles away. I had released, since he was in the nursing center, I was, I did the driving back and forth. He was in very good hands. But I got a call from Mercy Hospital again, from the paleontology manager, I guess. She goes, "Your dad has been in the hospital 3 or 4 times this year. We've run out of options for him." Okay, this really doesn't make any sense. He's being better care in hospice. And, to me, that was another question that, took me by surprise, but we pretty much knew that was going to come sooner or later. He was 87 years old. So the lady says, "You know what your dad said to me?" She goes, "Your dad told me that's not his call. That's Mike's call. That's Mike's department." "Okay, Dad, tell me this. You're letting me decide for you whether you're going to go into hospice or not." My dad was a smart aleck too. He all the way to the very end, he was very sarcastic. But he said to her, "That's Mike's department." Like he deferred that call to Mike. And that was, as Julie said, I believe, after I almost at that moment, that's when I started to lose myself. I'd spent 10 years with them, cramming wheelchairs in the back of my Pathfinder, trying to make them smile. I was only good at 2 things. Really lifting wheelchairs, I was pretty good at that, and making them laugh. That's what I could do. I was not the caregiver in a technical, sense. That's why I relied so heavily on the true caregivers of this world. Okay, so what is a caregiver? That was a question I struggled with. And as I put this presentation, I struggled with that a little bit. So I'm going to start with what the immediate reality that I was handed the responsibility of when I was a caregiver is this is a picture of my mother, my beautiful mom. There is an ashtray in this picture. This picture is way back in the 1940s, I believe, but there's an ashtray. My parents, neither one of my parents knew smoking was bad. In this video, I'm really sorry for the quality of these pictures. So here's my dad, big, strong guy. He has a pack of cigarettes in his hand. Okay, the first thing I had to do as a caregiver is you don't have any choices. This is, I complained to my parents for 30 years, you need to stop smoking. Okay, but how could you fight this? When my parents were young, physicians would recommend a health cigar. Okay, these are the physicians, the same, this is medical information. Okay, more doctors smoke Camels. That's a tough battle. Oh, Dad, if your doctor smokes Camel, why don't you? So those that realize it's hard with changing these are my parents that I'm dealing with. So it's hard to change that mindset. Okay, and then I deal with the reality as one, and I was oblivious to this. I think most children are oblivious to this. You hear your parents are taking medications for this or that, and you assume that, well, the doctor told you to do that, right? The doctor, I've got to take these 5 different prescriptions because the doctor told me to do that. Well, my dad didn't study. He just took whatever the doctor told him, because my dad called it, my doctor was a good old boy. He's a good old boy. He knew what he's doing. Well, it turns out that my dad and my mom, for the last 15 years of their life, they were over-medicated. They were just truly over-medicated. I probably made the wrong decision with my dad to put him in a nursing home because he kept falling, okay? And I didn't have the wherewithal to realize that, gosh darn it, Dad, you're taking 4 medications that cause dizziness. So that was the real learning experiences that I had with medication. And if I have any advice at all to leave people, this is one of those things that if you're a caregiver, and I love doctors, I love the medical profession, I love caregiving, but sometimes a family's got to ask a question. Sometimes using the internet's not a bad idea to see what the side effects of some of these medications are. I experienced it firsthand. For a while there, and it was too late. My dad had already made his decision. He was going to go and live with my mom in a nursing home. I made a decision one day to go into my doctor's office with a list of the medications, and I said, we hate to use that word, internet research, but I did some internet research, and 3 of these medications, doctor, cause dizziness. Well, my dad's been in to visit you 3 times this year for falls. And my doctor turns around. He was a good old boy, so you can't really question him. He turns around and says, okay, let's not give him that. Okay. Okay, that's good. I took Dad off 3 different medications. One was for pain in his knee, one was for his nerves, one was for sleep. All of them caused dizziness, and we just took him off. And my dad started improving immediately. But it took me a couple years to even realize that kind of stuff. If you check into the side effects of these things, you might learn something. So, as much as I love my parents' doctors, but when I saw them walking out of doctor's office with sample drugs, I realized I needed to become a better caregiver. Okay, so these are the 2 people that I came close to the last 10 years of their lives. They're both walking, okay, strong, both, as sarcastic and smart. They were just people. They were just regular people living the American dream. Less than 15 years later, both of them were on oxygen. Both of them were in wheelchairs. But my dad couldn't walk 5 feet. He had smoked for 55 years. He was proud of himself. He quit. I asked him, Dad, when did you start smoking? He thinks it was 8, maybe 8 or 9. It's crazy stuff. And my mom's the same way. They both quit plenty of time, but they both really suffered the side effects. So these are the 2 people that I remembered. That's really important. And in my mom's final days, something happened in my mind. Was an absolute miracle, because my parents grew up with the American dream. My dad did nothing but watch sports and the news. My mom did all the caregiving, the caring of the house. There was very little quality time. That was just the way they were. They were not loving kind of parents. They were good parents, but they were not loving kind of parents. And they were not talkers. Okay, so it was either watch Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, or do nothing with them. Okay. So this is where the reminiscing power came into play. I sat for days with my mom before she passed away. That week I was just there day and night. Okay, and really I got, selfish. I got tired of watching TV. My mom said very, very little. Then I started thinking about, I need to start talking about things. I need to start stirring things up a little bit. So, how many of you have a box of pictures at home that you are unmarked and you're in your basement, or one of these days you're going to do something with them? Okay, well, I can guarantee the pictures that I'm going to show you right now. My parents have 6 grandkids and 14 great grandkids. The pictures I'm going to show you right now, they've probably never seen before, and they may never see them. But my mom started telling me her story. This is my mom. This is the earliest picture that I have of my mom. She was 15, I think maybe even 14 years old there. Okay, this is Mirror Lake in Ludlow, Kentucky. This is my grandfather in the back of the picture there. Okay, my mom loved to fish. That's how her and dad got connected. They went fishing together. The love of my mom's life was her mother-in-law, my grandmother, Hazel. Okay, taught her how to sew, taught her how to cook, taught her everything. My mom had nothing. My mom had a fourth grade education. She grew up in a children's home in northern Kentucky. Okay, when she got out of the children's home, she met my dad, and they ended up getting married. That's how young she was. I don't want to mention how old, so these are the role models this is a role model this is the most spiritual woman I've ever met, is my grandmother. This is my sister Karen when she was 3 years old. Okay, drinking out of my grandmother's water faucet. My sister Karen died the same year that my mom died. She died of cancer. Okay, my mom would sit up in bed. Okay, she was still struggling. I'd have her attention for maybe an hour at a time. She told stories about my sister Karen. My parents, how many parents out there really acknowledge their pets more than they did your kids? I have a family of pet lovers. Okay, this is a picture of Nipper the dog. Forget the people in there. This is Nipper the dog. And this is my mom. My mom was a gorgeous woman. Did not know what she was not trained. She was not educated, not informed. She didn't have parents as role models, but she raised 4 kids, and I'm proud of her for that. Okay, this is the young guy she met. Okay, a veteran. This young man she met, I think he was 17 years old when they met. I think she was 14. This is that young man, 17-year-old young man, right before he gets on a boat to go to Germany in World War II. This is 1946 was this picture. This is my dad in Germany. I wouldn't know. This is a picture from a box of pictures that were found in the basement. This is Ed in Germany. This is my grandmother's writing. Okay. This is my dad, I guess, 17, 18 years old, playing cards. And another family mystery that you find out through stories. This back here, my dad was a sharpshooter. He was listed as a sharpshooter. Okay, but because Hitler was gone and the war was coming down, my dad turned out to be in the band. He played in the band. That was a trombone. He was listed as a trombone player. Well, my brother, he has 4 brothers and a sister. None of them ever saw my dad play a musical instrument. I don't know how in the world he ever got away in Germany as a trombone player. Okay, but those are little stories that the grandkids may or may not see someday. So they raised us. They did the best they could. They were very loving parents. They lost each other. Every family goes through struggle, financial struggle, kids struggle. I just happened to be the kid that got in the least amount of trouble, so I stayed closer to them than any of the rest of them. And this is my mom's, I think probably one of the last pictures that she took. You talk about the caregiving. Okay, my mom was really born and raised in a children's home, and she died in an institution. She basically finished her life in an institution. But my mom was happy. She was comfortable. She was so well cared for. All I had to do was show up. I was just so honored that they did these kinds of events for my mom. So that's the healing power of reminiscing. It's a beautiful young woman who just passed away, who asked me for permission to die. Okay, the healing power of that week, that final week with her, the amount of time I spent at the hospital and eventually in hospice, a lot of time to spare, a lot of time to kill. Did the pictures thing. I needed a little bit more than that, so I started having her tell me stories. Mom, I wanted you to answer some questions for me. Okay, Mom, tell me how you whatever listed it. Tell me how you met Dad. Tell me how you first learned to cook, whatever. She literally got elevated by being asked the questions. Lo and behold, I had no clue that it took that many years for someone to ask my mom something about her. Okay, she really livened up. This is a true story. She livened up. She was waiting. I started with other questions, more questions, and she was waiting for the next questions. Okay, and this is when the doctors are trying to decide whether they're going to, give her more surgery for cancer or whether she's going to, live or die. She wanted to answer these questions. So, Mom, tell me how you did this. That's where basically losing myself and finding myself. I'm taking the path that I'm taking. I just saw a quote. This was just sent to me this past week. I realized then that there's a certain stage in your life that basically telling stories is as important as walking. You have to get the stories out of you. You have to be asked the stories, okay? I found out on that hospital floor that just by asking my mom stories, I started getting answers from her roommates who I'd never met in my life. They wanted to tell me how they learned how to cook, you know, and other before you knew it, the aides and the nursing staff, they would hear a question. The nurses would want to say, you know where I learned how to cook? It was that moment in time, that the special moments in time that I'll never forget. And this is at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, we're trying to decide whether my mom's going to live or not. They're talking about stories. So this is where we took it to the next level. I'm basically semi-retired. This is the kind of work I had never planned on being fully retired, but this is the kind of work that really drives me. I learned from these lessons. I learned a lot of lessons that baby boomers have not learned yet. You know, baby boomers have got to start recording stories. It's for their loved ones. Their kids and their grandkids don't care right now, but they're going to care. They're going to care one of these days. Okay, so what did I decide to do the rest of my life? Basically, I'm going after stories. That's my career. I founded a company called One Legacy, and I got that. Well, when you own your own company, you can give yourself a title. My title is Chief Story Publisher. Okay, now defy that. Come on, it's like that's all I do. I've had this honor of being Chief Story Publisher, and anywhere I go, and in any senior community, any family I talk to, I've been involved in hospice situations 4 or 5 different times now in my life. People ask me, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm Chief Story Publisher. And these would be complete strangers wanting to tell me a story. They think that I'm going to write everything down for one thing, but the fact is that the need is there. It's universal. It's universal to stop and contemplate for a second, and what about me? What about my life? I want to tell you about how, I learned how to drive, that kind of thing. So that's what I did. We have a little company called One Legacy. We have 2 programs, okay? Because I believe, I put a website out there. Some of you might have seen it, or some of it or not. But I've been publishing stories myself for the last couple years. We've got stories from around the world. People wanting to stop and take a minute and just publish a story, get a thought out of your mind, an inspiration out of your mind, and publish it on our website for free. We want to take it further. It starts with the family. My lessons in life and how I'm going to find myself is through family healing. So family legacy sharing. We finished our first project. This is our first formal project with this family, Marlene Phillips. Her family approached us. We didn't approach them. Their mom has dementia, and they can tell it's slipping fast. It was really an important time. Okay, and I thought there were tons of services out there. There probably are a ton of services out there. But what she found out about us is we take that box of pictures. All we do is take the box of pictures or the photo albums and say, Mom, tell us about this picture. So what we did for Marlene Phillips' family is we created her video. Okay, she wasn't on video. Her voice was on the video. Her stories were on the video. We're really excited about that. So that was an important path that we just took. But the whole group thing is really inspiring to me, because I know, especially with all the time I spent in the nursing home my mom lived in, the loneliness in the hallways, the loneliness on the weekends. It was just, the group thing is what really motivates me. So this is the driving force of my company, is group legacy sharing. It's a group activity. It's for groups that want to capture moments. Okay, it could be a youth organization. It could be veterans. Okay, who wouldn't want to collect the stories of a veterans group? Okay, but right now we focus on senior communities. We offer an activity in life enrichment teams. If you have a team of life enrichment team, if you're an activity director looking for a new activity, I can pretty much guarantee this is going to draw some interest for your residents and your team. It's all in the cards. Today, during the door prize, I think we're going to raffle off a deck of these cards. But basically, I couldn't. My memory's short. I ran out of questions I could ask my mom, so I had to write things down. Okay, I had to write these questions down before I even showed up. So what we did is we learned how to, we want to have an icebreaker game for communities and groups. So we really started writing things down. Then we realized people have a hard time opening up the pieces of paper, yada, yada, yada. So my partner and I decided, a card deck is pretty good. We started, basically we created a card deck. 52 cards, looks just like a poker deck. You want to see a popular guy when you walk to the, in a senior community with a deck of cards. Pick a card, any card, draw a card. It creates an energy, a buzz that's really, really cool. One person at a time, one person at a card, one card at a time. The amount of respect, the room gets quiet. People that don't know each other, they've lived each other, they live on the same floor, they live in the same building, they don't know each other well. When they start talking about this question here, what were your favorite childhood games? The amount of respect that they give each other, the amount of attention they give to each other, I realized then, there's a need for this. This is a program. It's just, this, I guess, as part of me becoming whole again. This is what I get to do. I get to launch the program. I get to go in. I get to invite them in. I get the card deck out, and we learn. We meet people from around the world, and there's never been a single person. This particular group, when we went into Autumn View Gardens, we were expecting 8 people, and we got 22 people. Okay, and we knew there'd be some general interest. This young lady right here was asked the question, "When did you first fall in love?" I didn't realize. I mean, that was just. She turned color. She turned red. Everybody smiled. It was just the greatest moment. Just talking about it. And then within 5 minutes, she didn't like the guy anyway. But it turns out she fell in love with this guy because he had a horse. But so those are the kinds of things that we get to go with. We've launched the program around the Metro East and St. Louis area. We are scheduled. We're visiting 3 or 4 different communities every week. Okay. We start by this deck of cards. It's just an icebreaker game. The real magic behind all this is a journal. Okay, we're going to come in here for an 8-week program. Between weeks, we want you to take this journal. We talked about your family history. Why don't you write a story about your family? Okay. We know most people can't write, or most people won't write, but we can also have the ability to record as well. Okay, so we can take recordings and turn them into stories, but the thing is that the book has their name on it, and they get to write. My mind works very simply, but my business is based on one shared story is one legacy. Okay, this is an actual example from Autumn View Gardens. This young lady is 94 years old, and she wrote a story about her and her husband met. I mean, she was just riveted. She was so excited to bring this story back the next, she brought a whole tablet. She says she's got dozens of stories she wants to write. But just listening to her talk about that, it's as if she was there that time she met her husband. So it's just the activity. We're not going to publish any great books, or we're not going to be big stars or anything, but it's the activity itself that brings the value to the residents and to the families. Okay, let's see here. Well, what we do, and I'm not selling anything here, but not even doing a very good job, we publish books for the communities in the community center. So basically, these are the stories of the residents. These are the stories of the community. You can take a look if you like, but it's basically we take those stories, we package them all together, and they get these stories when they're finished. They get them back in a book volume. It's just a book. Okay. And this is a picture of the book. This is a lady who wrote a story about meeting Vincent Price. Just writing that story. We called her up to see what the experience was of writing that story about meeting Vincent Price. How many people know who Vincent Price is? Okay, good. We've been to some crowds where they didn't know who Vincent Price was. She cried, just telling me that she wrote that taking that 15 minutes of time to write that story was incredible. Okay. So this is where we'll wrap it up here. Any comments, any questions? That's where this all came from. I'm still finding myself with the help of my beautiful wife. But this is basically where we're going to go, is we're going to be publishing stories. That was a really well done slide. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So now, by popular request, I guess, we're going to actually let you try and experience legacy sharing, what really goes on, okay, to kick off our program. We've got enough cards. Hopefully we have enough people. Sonia, the card decks are back. We want to get one of those decks of cards for every table. I took this. One of my first customers was my favorite customer. Hits Home in Alhambra. Anybody familiar with Hits Home? Oh my gosh. Su- Su- well, you got out okay. I better tone it down a little bit. Susan Tudor, the executive director, decided, because most of the times when we go into places, we have an option. We'll host these get-togethers for you, but we'll also train your team to do it. And she had this brilliant idea of bringing all of our managers, all of our head nurses, I think there was even a maintenance person that came into our train the team approach. And we were all stunned. Where I didn't even know what to do myself. That we were around the table, there were tears. There was learning. There was the best bonding experience that group has had in a long, long time. So it's an honor to find out these pleasant surprises. But this is really a motivation, or it's a team building exercise too. It was just completely by accident that we found that. But thank you very much, everybody.